Hello, everybody. This is your producer, Chris, and I just wanted to take a moment before we get to this week's episode to honor and remember the brave men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. On this Memorial Day, we stand united in gratitude and respect for those who have served in our armed forces and given their lives in defense of our freedoms. To our fallen heroes, we owe a debt that can never be repaid. Your courage, dedication, and unwavering commitment to duty inspire us every day. You have laid down your lives so that we might continue to live in a land of liberty and opportunity. To the families and loved ones of these brave soldiers, we extend our deepest sympathies and heartfelt thanks. Your sacrifice, too, is immeasurable, and we honor the strength and resilience you have shown in the face of profound loss. As we enjoy the freedoms and privileges of this nation, let us never forget the cost at which they have been secured. Today and every day, we remember and honor those who have paid the ultimate price. Their legacy lives on in our hearts and in the enduring spirit of our nation. So on behalf of everyone here at Tabletop TV and Tabletop Talk, to all those who have served, currently serving, who have family members and friends who have served but paid the ultimate sacrifice on this very important day, from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome to Tabletop Talk. This is Jeremy. I am one of your hosts, and my other host is across from me.
It's me, Kyle.
And with us are our two regular guests. We have Rick.
Hello.
And Treven.
Here.
Woohoo! Anyway, you know us. We're Tabletop Talk. You've been with us for a few episodes, and if you haven't, welcome.
Yeah, welcome to the crew.
You're going to listen to a lot of smart stuff, whole lot of dumb stuff, and that's probably our balance.
That's about right. I think that sums up this whole thing. We're professionally inadequate.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a perfect description. As I tried moving and I bumped into my microphone. So perfect.
All of us in our early mid-30s, just like bumbling around.
Whoa! We could be ageless, timeless. Let's not put numbers on things, guys.
The way we talk gives it away.
Yeah, I know. That's fair. Anyway, we're gonna start off like we always do. Let's just tell everyone how we're doing. We'll start over with Kyle. Kyle, how you been?
Actually today I'm doing really good. Few sad things have happened lately, but overall, it's just we've been overcoming them as a family lately, and just life's good,
That's good to hear. Rick?
I'm feeling it. It's wonderful. Weather's supposed to get really nice this week. I've got a bunch of yard work planned and to finish up projects, then kind of move just a bunch of heavy stuff. So it's going to be a really hot, really fun weekend for me.
That's good. What about you, Treven?
Same. I am excited for a change in the weather, and I actually just got a new combat patrol for my Warhammer 40k Blood Angels army, so
Nice.
pretty stoked.
Nice.
Pretty excited for that.
Go Blood Angels.
My wife doesn't know about it yet, but she will tomorrow.
I'll know when you tell her, because you'll be knocking on my door asking to stay
Probably
for the night.
sleeping bag. So
Great, and I'm doing great too. This is going to be one of the most adult married people things to say, but this weekend I had a pretty good weekend, and my wife went away with her girlfriends from college, and I spent the whole weekend literally just catching up on chores and stuff that needed to be done while watching My Hero Academia.
There we go.
So I think I crushed through like 2 or 3 seasons, but I also moved furniture, vacuumed, wiped down stuff. And so at the end of the weekend, it was like, wow, this place is really clean. I'm exhausted from my weekend, but it was like one of the, those things that as an adult, they're just hanging over you until you get it done.
Yeah,
and then, yeah. So I did that and I was like, wow, what an exciting weekend. I cleaned.
Well, My Hero Academia is really cool and all, but I figured the best thing you can do when you're working on chores is actually flip on YouTube and go to Tabletop TV, where you can see our first 3 episodes that have recently come out.
That's true. I was watching Tabletop TV on repeat is what I meant to say. That's why it's got, each video probably has 30 views by now.
Yeah, if you say my video over and over again on there, it starts to sound like My Hero Academia. That's where the confusion was.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, anyway, I'm going to kick it over to Treven, who's
Yes,
going
sir.
to take over for a bit.
Yeah, so I'm going to be the host today. So
Dr. RPG.
Dr. RPG. This time coming at it as being the new guy. So what I wanted to talk about was anyone who wants to be a DM, anyone who has that interest in becoming one, because that's something I would really enjoy doing. So I wanted to ask some questions to some guys with some more experience. Hopefully, someone listening who also has an interest, maybe they can get an idea of what to think about, and maybe some tips to make it go as smooth as possible. So for the first question, so to you guys, like, what are the traits of a good DM? Like, what is something that you would like to see DMs do more or less of?
I'll go ahead and start. And this is Jeremy. I think one of my traits that I always look for in a DM, a good DM, is just the DM is ready to play. Because to me, Dungeons and Dragons is such a cooperative game. And I want someone who's showing up, who's ready to lean into the silliness sometimes, combat you, sometimes go with you, sometimes go against you, and just be there to play. Because, I mean, we're all adults playing a game together, and we're bringing out different sides of ourselves, but a lot of it is like childlike wonder of like, hey, we continue to get together and play this game, and I want my DM to just be in that mindset.
Yeah, it's fun game. It's fun brain exercise. I agree with that. I think the other thing, though, is they need to be that, but with a good balance of they have to have enough drive and care for the game to put the work into it. Because there's a lot of minimalist DMs out there, and that's totally fine. But if you come in completely unprepared, I promise you, your game is not going to be good. There's people who I've read on Reddit and such who are convinced that they're a no prep DM and their players always have fun. Yet I also then later see those same posters asking to set up a new game because their games are falling through. All of a sudden people are always busy, so they need a new one. Wouldn't be happening probably if your games were actually good. And the players can tell. They can tell when you have not put any prep into it and you are just winging it, which, like Jeremy says, the DM needs to be then playful enough that they can lean into that, because there's going to be obviously things the DM did not prep for. But as long as you have a foundation and all, or they put in the effort to put in that foundation and they're willing to play and have fun, I think that makes good qualities, and they can't take it too serious. Is the problem. They need to take it serious enough to put the effort in, but not so serious that they can't play with us because we did something silly to their BBEG or something.
Yeah, I would add that on top of kind of being prepared, kind of having that improvisational skills, is to roll with it. Like, obviously as a DM, you've got an idea like, hey, I'm going to be guiding them this way. Like, I want them to make a very crucial decision here. But it's what happens if they don't do that. Or like it goes a completely different way. Like, if you're so dead set on one path of how the game and the campaign is going to go, the minute it diverges a little bit, all of a sudden everything's out the window. Like,
all of a sudden rocks fall, party dies.
Yeah.
Trust me, as an inexperienced DM, I made that mistake and I couldn't take it back, and it ended up to ending the game because no matter what options I put in front of my players, they always picked a new option. Mm-hmm. And that was just, I was new to DMing. That was my first attempt at it. I was trying to get a bunch of my friends and roommates into it at the time. And it didn't end up happening. But that's okay, because now I've learned from that mistake, and 5e is so much easier than 3.5.
Yeah. It's not to say like you have to have a creative mind to be a DM. It definitely helps to be able to have a little bit of that imagination and an ability to kind of go off the cuff and to think on the fly. I think would be probably one of the biggest resources as a DM. Like obviously you're going to want to do all the research, the preparation, and the pre-skills before the campaign, but being able to adapt in the moment, I think, is huge as well.
I would agree with that, but I also would, if you're someone who is not great at improving, I would say that the more that you put into your research and the different things that you have, there's stuff that you could pull. Like, for instance, Kyle said that, his players would always choose a different path than he would put forward. Those paths don't just those things don't just disappear entirely. You know what I mean? Like if you had a puzzle in a room and your players don't go into that room, oh, looky there. The puzzle could magically appear in another room because they didn't go in the room.
All right, you're not wrong, but in this case, they fled the country they were in.
But I'm just saying, like, if you're like afraid that like it's all going to be improv, you can do stuff to where you're like, well, I have all these things that I already planned, and you don't have to force it, but you do have those things to pepper in. And if things are going too crazy for you because your players keep going sideways, you could talk to one of your veteran players to be like, hey, I've got this kind of cool story. It would be cool if you guys kind of tried to go along with just some parts, because if Kyle would ask me that, I'd be like, yeah, I'll make it work, because if you have this crazy intricate web, I want to see what that is.
Yeah, no, and actually mentioning that, as I've grown as a DM, I actually do sometimes now talk to some of my players off to the side, especially if I want to introduce a mechanic or something new to it. I like to have it affect one of the players, and that's why we're introducing it. So if, say, Jeremy tells me in his backstory that I notice he has like a twin brother, and it's really not relevant. Jeremy didn't expect anything of it. I might mention later on, like, as the party's going on, like, hey, buddy, do you mind if I take some liberties with this character from your backstory? I'm going to give you just this quick heads up. He may or may not come, but I mean, I usually ask in advance. I don't ask like the game before, because I don't want to ruin the surprise. Usually I ask these things now at the start of campaigns, but there was a point where I was pulling people off to the side and asking, is it okay with this? Or heads up, I've been working on this and I need you guys to just kind of drop a little bit just for the sake of, I would like you guys to try this temple or this dungeon I've created. I know it's not normally what your characters would do, but if you guys can help me come up with a reason, like what would motivate you guys to go in there?
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, you guys think for someone starting out, you would suggest just getting into it as long as you're well prepped for a whole campaign, or doing a one shot, doing, let's say, just a temple and starting small?
Oh, easily a one shot, man. Yeah. I recommend a one shot for experimenting with it. Find your most veteran players and let them know you're trying to. They may not have the greatest time in the first session, but they understand because a lot of them have tried to DM before. And so they're usually the ones who will be lenient and give you a chance and will know when to go a little easier and not harass the DM as much because it's their first time through. If you put a bunch of new players in, usually you end up with, well, a D&D party.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think it's more the middling players that you have to watch out for, because some, as this is coming from a new DM, I'm about to be doing my 5th one shot. No long-term campaigns, but this will be my 5th one shot. And DMing for a couple people who have never played D&D was super fun, because they were just all questions, and it was, yeah, sure, why not? Let's try it. Are you sure about that? And so I think sometimes the players, like knowledge, it's kind of tricky. Like once you think you gain some knowledge about something, you're like, well, now I know everything about this,
and I'm going to be master of the universe,
and I'm going to be combative. And then you gain more knowledge, and you're like, oh shoot, I was dumb. I was an idiot. Maybe I should have listened more. That's why veteran players.
I think actually
great.
you're exactly right. I was mistaken when I said new players, because new players are they go with the DM almost too heavily, which is good. It's a good way to learn. Just follow and learn as you do. But you're right. It's the middle players. And those are the people you have to be careful of that become DMs sometimes as well. Because usually they'll hit a point that they believe they know everything, like Jeremy said. And then they run a game, but they've decided now to homebrew all this stuff before they've learned how to DM. So they end up causing a huge chaotic thing, or they end up pulling a Viva La Dirt League and just the DM wrecks everybody else and all. Sorry, it was a funny skit on theirs. I don't know if anyone else watches their stuff, but
I would also add that as a new DM or your first time, like picking your campaign party, because like going between like if it's a new player, if it's a middle player, if it's a veteran player, if you pick the right party and like the people campaigning in your party or your campaign that you're going to DM for, that veteran might be your biggest asset, because they are, if you know them, or if they're like a good person, like, and they know that they're there kind of to play but also to help, they can ask you a bunch of targeted questions, like all of their like checks and everything. They can almost be your like bumpers on the bowling alley.
Yeah,
kind of your
they're like,
lifeline.
hey, I'm going to check a perception here. Is there anything that might be off in this area? And you're like, oh, there is something in this dungeon. I almost forgot about that. Like using them as a rebound, because that they're the experienced player and they kind of know, particularly like if you use that first campaign from a source book, because people know a lot of those stories.
Yeah, I like that.
And so they might be able to help within that. Like the party might know kind of a little bit of the details that maybe normally they wouldn't know beforehand, but that's going to help in making sure everything flows and you don't miss any crucial pieces or leave stuff out, or surprise everyone by you left out something like 2 sessions ago or like a half hour ago that you're supposed to tell them that they didn't know, but because they know the source material, they kind of just go with it, and they're like, hey, I know
that's when the bushes start to rustle. Wait, bushes? Yes, you're all in a forest. Wait, since when?
That is funny, Rick, that you're like, get it from a source book. I'm just thinking now, and I'm about to do my 5th one shot. And maybe it's just because it's a one shot, the stakes are low, but they've all been homebrew settings.
Well, I think you can get away with one shot.
Yeah, one shot homebrew. But this current one I'm doing, it's interesting. I think it's probably because this is the 5th one shot I've done, where I'm like, okay, so I've started to, in my mind, world build way more than the others, just because I think I've grown a little as a DM to where it's like, oh, this is exciting. So yeah, Treven, I would 100% agree with Kyle and Rick. I would say just pick your players right. If you find a source book and to do a campaign, try one shots, and I would say just kind of just go with it,
And just one last thing on that is, if you are trying to run a campaign right off the bat as a new DM, you can do homebrew. I'm not saying that it will go wrong. However, I do think you'd benefit from running something like Lost Mines of Phandelver or Dragon of Icespire Peak, or the new starter kit that had come out like about a year or so ago for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. They're small little like 25-page campaigns with a few missions here and there, a couple maps pre-made. It's a good way to get your foot in the door until you feel comfortable to start doing your own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know something that I was going to add as a new player that I really like both the campaigns that I've been in with you guys is we always had somewhat of a session zero. Like we started off, we kind of introduce everyone, and really not much happens on that, but it's just the introduction. And as a new player, that was super, super helpful. Like make it really low key that first episode and ease into it. Yeah, just coming from my point of view, that's what you guys did, and it was really nice.
Well put. Kyle, Treven's coming for our job.
I'm on my way.
Dude, it was him or the AI. I don't know which is better. They're almost the same. They both know too much.
Who's to say he's not? They don't know.
I'm half convinced. He pulls out articles left and right.
So we kind of touched on it, but as a DM, how do you handle when things just go completely off script? Like, and I mean this in multiple ways, either actually in the campaign, like your example you gave before, taking a path that wasn't really there, wasn't really thought out, or even like the other side, players that kind of start to get angry or mad and start to antagonize, when things just go kind of off the rails.
Yeah. Jeremy, I know you've only done a few one-shots, but how about you take this one first? I think you'll have a more lighthearted thing versus me, because I DM a lot and I'm gonna need a moment to think.
Yeah, you can. It'll make you laugh. I DM'd with a friend. We're just doing a one-shot. It was real simple, and it started out in a high school. Like, that's where it started out. And there was an NPC, a friendly janitor, right? A friendly custodian who had a mop, and one of my nephews was like, "I steal the mop." I'm like, I was like, okay, make a roll, right? And then the other nephew was like, "Can I steal the mop from him?" Right? And then he's like, "I steal it back." And it was funny because my friend, you could tell his blood was already boiling as a veteran DM. And I was like, and I just said to them, I was like, you guys, if you would like, and their dad was I forgot, my brother-in-law was, for the first one, was with them too. And he's just like, these are my sons. What are they doing? And I was like, guys, if you want to just make rolls to steal the mop back and forth for 3 hours, we can do that. There's other stuff we can do. This was their first time playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I was like, There are other things we can do that we do have planned if you want. But if you guys want to just keep stealing a mop back and forth and back and forth, we'll go with it. And the mop stealing stopped right then and there, but it was just funny. I think there's a balance between total freedom and reminding your players, like, hey, this is why we're here. And I think for a DM especially, trying to figure out when to take things personal and when to not take things personal. Like them stealing mops back and forth. They're like, oh my gosh, I can steal something. I can steal something.
That's obviously not
right?
Personal, especially as new player.
Yeah.
Every first player, when they're figuring it out, always does.
Yeah.
And this is part of my advice to anyone who's starting a thing and learning how to be a DM. You have to realize anytime you introduce a new player into it, they're going to do 2 phases. First phase is they're going to be really shy and ask a lot of questions, but they're not going to do a lot of talking or moves. Second one is they're going to do a few really chaotic things, because it's almost like when you first get a video game that doesn't have a real good tutorial. Mm-hmm. You're hitting buttons, you're doing things just to see what you can and can't do. You'll pick up an item on the thing, and all of a sudden you get I stole. Now I know not to do that. Granted, their characters would know, but you gotta give new players a little bit of leeway for the first, I'd say about 3 to 5 games. That's about my leeway point for, just little random shenanigans that eventually I will then start to go all right, we can keep doing this. Or we can start if we do, we're going to start applying consequences. Otherwise, we need to get back on track, and Rick would love to take his turn. Treven, stop rolling for juggling. Nobody's watching your character juggle.
On the subject, Treven, I have 2 incidences that I can think of from campaigns I've done in the past. There was a one-shot a buddy of mine was leading, and it was our normal group was down to just 2 players and a DM, so it was very unique in how to do it. And the whole premise of it was a labyrinth. That midway through the labyrinth, we see these shadow creatures, and I forget if it was my character or the other one. We had really high perception, and we were going to roll for perception to see what they were. And if we rolled high enough, we were going to find out that they weren't shadow creatures. They were mimics of each other. So one shadow was my character, who the other player was going to fight. And then I had a shadow I was fighting, which was a mimic of his character. And
that's kind of cool.
We came 2 points away from ruining the entire premise of the game to where we wouldn't have fought them because we're like, oh, hey, by the way, as you hurt this person, you're hurting your playing partner. Like the damage was correlated and everything. It was really cool. Really cool. And we almost ruined the whole surprise like 15 minutes in. Like we walked in, we're like, oh, creatures, perception check, please. And he was my buddy that was DMing, he's like, you almost ruined it. Like I was going to have to like completely flip the script. You were going to find that out. And he's like, and I had a Minotaur beast waiting that we were just going to like fall on Labyrinth and he was going to be in the middle. Like he had his like Uno reverse ready, but we failed the perception check. And so then we just fought each other for a good 20 minutes and until we started getting bloodied. We're like, oh, wait, why is the damage I'm taking from this the same as the damage you're taking that thing? So we kind of figured it out and solved the puzzle. But he was like, all right, this is literally your first interaction with these and you're about to ruin the whole surprise. But he was ready. So I think just being prepared for what to do in case like the thing gets revealed too soon.
Gotcha. Yeah. And also, I would be disappointed if there wasn't a Minotaur in a Labyrinth.
Right?
And I just feel like you can't write a good Labyrinth without a Minotaur.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
So as for me, when it comes to players kind of breaking off script and throwing all my plans into chaos and not the way I want them to, there's a couple ways I've handled it. I used to handle it really bad when I was starting out because I was still new. I wasn't quite at a mature enough point to make good calls. And I ended up ending the campaign by running them over with vampire spawn cavalry.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that was the one that, Jeremy, I've mentioned it a couple times. You were there for one game, and they ended up killing you.
Yes, but in their defense, at the time, I did not know what spawn was. And you told me that I had killed Spawn before, and then I just told them like I've killed him before, not realizing that vampire and Spawn are two different things, and they were real confused, and it led to my death. So in retrospect, could it have been my fault?
I don't think so. I think no one was expecting the like barbarian to do true strike and then roll a nat one.
Yeah, that's fair. They also invited him into the house, also very, very
right
bad.
Off the bat.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. So
anyway,
in that campaign, I did everything I could originally to fix it up. They were meant to, the idea was they were taken in as slaves, captured and brought across from all around the continent to this, I can't remember any of the names, but it was like a southern eastern part of the continent that was secretly being run by like a vampire lord. No big deal. The typical, hidden evil empire that everyone probably should know is evil. They were bringing slaves in. The party escapes the slavers in the town, holds up a mansion there. They defeat the guy who runs the town. And now I gave them options that they could either continue to bring in slaves to pay off the village's protection fee, or they can go themselves to the capital, or they can stay and try and fight. They decided to just flee after everything. After killing Jeremy's character, they ran into the woods, and that was hard because my hope was there was a lot of people who said they wanted to be actual good characters in it, and when the cards came down, they all flipped script and went into like this neutral evil party of like, we're not sure what we're doing, but the most skilled player is a barbarian who wants to start an orc war tribe, so sure, let's do that. Eventually I kept trying to alter them the path. It didn't work out. Long story short, again, rocks fall, party dies. That was how I handled that, which was not a good way to handle it. But now that I'm more experienced, I definitely find that if players are getting just a little too out of hand, I find it easier just to pull Jeremy off to the side and say like, hey man, I know you're kind of doing this for like poop and giggles and such, but can you maybe help me out, work with me on this, because I've worked really hard on this dungeon. I need you guys to keep moving forward, otherwise the game won't go forward.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, honestly, like, for instance, in one of the campaigns with Kyle, he trapped us in a chasm, but one of our party members had Misty Step. And we're looking up and we're like, oh, hey, that's close enough to do. So let's just have him Misty Step up, toss a rope down, and get out of this chasm. And then leave this place, and we'll think about it later, except for that's the place we were supposed to be in for the next few weeks, So, yes, in our minds, we were escaping our character's danger, right? And Kyle's mind at that point, he's like, you guys are messing up everything I planned.
Well, and I mean, and this is the hard part, because when you play a role-playing game, and especially when you really get into it, you try to make good calls that would make sense for your character to do. What's the number one thing that even in real life we do? We don't end up in as many experiences, but when the opportunity does occur, we choose usually life. We choose to avoid the danger and come back. But the problem was, this was like the final climax of the campaign. They were about to go through, fight the BBEG and a bunch of monsters. It was actually Lost Mines of Phandelver. They had gotten to Wave Echo Cave. It was the last thing they had to do. I couldn't let them just leave like they wanted to, because that would affect the overall campaign. Because I also make it very clear to players that, heads up, if you leave to go do something else, that means the bad guys get more time to prep, or you may miss your opportunity to save someone. And if that doesn't work, then I add usually a major consequence to it. But in this case, this was literally the last thing. We were about to pass it on to a DM. So I came up with a unique curse on the entrance of the tunnel. And when the players asked me about it later, I let them know that I added it there for the sake of, like, I understand you guys want to flee and such, but we are right at the end here, and we need to keep going. So if you guys can please just suspend a moment and put on a little bit of disbelief and just go forward. I don't like doing that to people, but sometimes you end up stuck in a spot where it's like, hey, I'm not railroading you, but I need you to at least stay on a path.
Yeah, and I think at that moment, it did feel, as a player, railroading, you know what I mean? And I think that stuff, like, the toughest thing I think about DM and player conflict is that you're friends. You know what I mean? It's not just like, hey, we work together and I'll see you tomorrow, right? And I'm like, oh, fine. And then I'm like, well, I don't have to, like, talk to this person that much, right? Or it's like, it's not just like I'm going to play in a rec game and I'll never see this person again. I'm just playing basketball at the Y. I don't know who this person is. I don't know their names.
Or that coworker you joke around with at work, but you're probably not going to go over and have dinner with them.
No, it's instead people you've known for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and you have to navigate this personal relationship. And I think that's the tough part. And so even though when we jumped up and I knew that wasn't there before, and it's pissing me off, like, you're frustrated in that moment. I think as a player, it's important to try to flip the script and put yourself in the DM's mind. And then for the DM, just know that sometimes your players aren't trying to railroad you either. They're just, both of you are not trying to make it hard for each other. It's just that sometimes when there's so many choices, it just happens. So I think having emotional strength is really, really tough, but really good for DMs.
Agreed. And I honestly, the older I get and the more I DM, the more I realize I just need to communicate with my players, because it worked out, the curse thing did, and it actually led to, I added extra things because nobody wanted to move either. So it made, like, them start to become aggressive towards each other. So they all actually got kind of something that I think a few of them wanted for a little bit, which was a little in-party fighting, because I banned it beforehand. So this allowed a few people to beat each other up, and then our paladin decided to show our barbarian who actually was boss. That was kind of cool. But no, I don't normally put people in that. Usually I try to make several options and write out multiple things now, so that it's like, okay, if they decide they're not going to go to the lake to investigate the missing person and they decide they're going to go to the tavern instead, I'll take them onto this quest, or I'll take them on this quest. I write like 2 to 4 other quests just in case. That way, it seems still planned, but a lot of it's still very improvised because I want my players to have as free range of a thing. But if I give them, 2 to 4 options and they don't pick any of them, then I need to pull them off to the side and communicate like, I'm sorry, but for the sake of this, can you guys please pick one of these? I thought out everything I could. I appreciate that you came up with something I wasn't ready for. However, for the sake of the game, is there any way we can do this? Otherwise, we're going to have to come back next week.
Yeah, and that was what you just hit on, something as a new player I saw. So when you were a DM, I noticed that communication, having one-on-one talks, which was really big. Then another thing that I took from watching you DM is how well you take notes and make those available to the players. So Kyle here had a Discord set up. We had a Discord channel, and he would have 2 sections, one with all the loot, everything we got, everything we collected on the journey, everything we kind of had on hand, and he would update this as the quests went on, the campaign went on. And the other one was just a little blurb, a little paragraph about what happened, what story. And to me, that was like the difference in my small sample size, but I could tell between the difference between a good DM and a great DM, and that just made it easy for me to jump back in. We're all busy with all of lives, so the communication in multiple facets, I thought was really nice.
To clarify, he means that I'm a good DM, not a great DM.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Okay, well, I think we've talked way too much, and we would keep talking if our producer would allow it, but he's already pulled Kyle out of the room. He's just tied the rope around my ankles, thankfully not my neck. And so I'm gonna go ahead while my vocal cords still work. I'm gonna say goodbye to y'all. So anyway, this is Jeremy. This has been Tabletop Talk. Thank you for listening in, and please come back.
Like and subscribe.
Help us!